ペイトリーアンサブスクライバー、ボーナスゲット。
And if you're listening to this, you have stumbled into our secret recordings on Patreon, which not that many people listen to, but you're all amazing. And we are going to excite your senses with a carnival of delights known as Bad Day on the Midway. It was developed by Inkscape and published by Inkscape. Where else but on the personal computer? Its earliest release date and territory was October 31, 1995 in the United States. And that pretty much everything about that is spelling out what this game is going to be. It is an FMV game about clicking on things and seeing video. And the residents were involved, and they did the music, and I think some of the plot bits, maybe? It's hard to tell.
We should probably talk about who they are.
I mean, like, what are you like? The eyeball men that wear top hats. That's their thing. And they did some of the most important albums of the 70s. And then 20 years later, they decided to make a computer game. That's apparently the part of it. There's actually some interesting interviews that you can read about from some of the Inkscape team, I think, where they talk a lot about Bad Day at the Midway and some of their other things that they made. You can find that online in your own time, but we have to talk about the game itself.
Mind if I do my best to try and summarize the game real quick?
Oh boy, you can try.
Okay, well this is a adventure game might be the wrong word. Multimedia experience, let's call it. I think that's accurate. And this game is about a kind of terrible carnival sometime during the 50s, 60s. It's not really clear.
I think you'll find that it's a fantastic carnival. Wow!
And you go into this carnival as this child named Timmy, who likes everything, to quote himself, but there are also several other characters wanting the carnival, and you can go inside them and be them. You're not possessing them. And basically, you experience everything kind of differently depending on who you're playing as. And they all have their own stories, which they will gladly tell you all about in excruciating detail. And that's kind of just the point, just explore and figure out what's going on with all these people before you run out of time to play the game.
And by run out of time, you will probably either get murdered or die of horrible plague, is the most likely conclusions to the game. So just to sort of set up that it is not a game about wandering around a happy carnival and riding on a roller coaster and getting sick from corn dogs or something.
As no one was going to tell me when they first had me play this. Thanks, guys.
One issue I have with this game is that there isn't a whole lot to this crappy carnival.
Yeah, the environment is small. You think it might be bigger, but it's only, I would say,
20 screens?
I was going to say 30 screens. There's a few like very minor screens that don't do anything and are just like movement points. But yeah, like it is quite a truncated experience in many ways.
It's kind of frustrating because there are these really cool FMV sequences you unlock by getting on the different rides, like the excruciatingly long Torture's Top 10, which is pretty much the perfect thing to watch if you don't want to sleep for a few days. The surreal shooting galleries FMV, it's not a minigame, it's an FMV sequence.
There is no game in this. We got to make that clear. You might think, oh, there's going to be like a mini game in here. There are no mini games. It is just FMVs. Gotta make that clear here.
The only real game is to make sure you're not inside a building when you're playing as any adult character who isn't Ted.
Well, and see, you brought it up there. There is no game, because as we talked about, we weren't even entirely sure if there was a way to avoid any of the deaths beyond random number generators.
I don't think there is, and I think it's might be intentional. It's very hard to tell what is intentional and what is broken game balance when it comes to a game made by an art collective on behalf of a second art collective. You are going to get some like nonsensical game design choices in this. There is an area in this game which is probably the largest area in the game, and the only way to explore it is to enter that building as an adult. And there is an extremely good chance that Ted, who is a crazy killer man, and the game makes that very clear almost immediately. The only characters who aren't Ted, I think there's like a couple of them, like Jocko and maybe one other, can explore this area. So if you enter there's a good chance Ted will just kill you, but if he doesn't, then you get to explore the largest area in the game, full of like little details and plot elements and stuff. So it's a weird one.
You know, you mentioned the plot, but I do want to also point out one other thing that's kind of bothers me, is that the backstories you can see for each character, all of them done by different comic artists, I might add, and really cool visually. Those are far more interesting than the plot that the game actually gives you.
Well, because the game itself itself doesn't really have that much going on, although there is more than you would think. You can sort of pick up on story shards or threads of plot when you replay it, because the game is short, and it is intending for you to play it many times and try and body swap to the different characters and maybe try and progress their plot a little bit more. When a character in this game runs into a second character, if they have a story to progress, and you're at the right point of the story, and maybe the time of day is the right time of day.
And the planets all line just right.
You'll get like a conversation, like Otto is trying to blackmail, I can never remember the country singer girl's name. I keep thinking her name is Dixie, but it's not Dixie, it's something else.
Dolly, I think it was?
Yeah, she has like a country singer name, basically. So Dolly, Dixie, something. And so she's getting blackmailed by him. So, you know, if you choose to play as him, he'll try and blackmail her. If you play as, what's his name, Jocko, you can initiate this quest where Jocko's trying to find some hidden money that's allegedly stashed away on this. And there's an IRS man who's trying to get the taxes. And it's kind of cool how like you can actually sort of engage with and be part of the various individual stories. But because it's all about, the stars aligning once in like an entire like generation, it is tough to actually get those. So it's hard to know if you're doing the right thing, which is always the flaw of this kind of like time-based, sequence-based game, because you could wander around this entire Midway trying to trigger an event, but you don't know how to trigger it, and you don't know that it exists, and you're just kind of like, I'm walking around in circles, I hope someone talks to me, kind of deal. And maybe it worked, maybe it didn't. There's some cool fixed ones, like if you take Timmy into the mirror hall of monsters kind of deal, like their storage area, most of the time, Ted will step out and be like, hello, Timmy, would you like to know a story about a little boy? Then you'll receive Ted's story sequence, which is the only way to get his sequence outside of, quite generously, the game will let you pick the story sequences on the credits screen, so you don't even have to play the game if you don't want to. That's a little bit of an odd choice, but that's what they did. But if you play as Ted and you wander through that area, then you can actually trigger that scene with Timmy showing up, and then you'll see Ted talking to Timmy as Ted, and all of the characters are just really kind of gross CG things.
With live-action eyes and mouth.
Oh, is that what was going on?
It's so uncanny. It's amazing when they do the close-ups of their faces and the characters are gesticulating like crazy, and then their eyes are like popping out, their mouths are flapping. Like, it's actually really almost unique because it's one of the only times I've seen 3D art done in this fashion. Well worth at least checking that out, like getting a video of seeing the people talk in this, because it's a really nice style, and I think you could easily, kind of use it again.
Yeah.
It's so weird. It's actually aged a lot better than most other titles from the era.
Yeah, I mean, also, because of the sort of limited amount of environments, the video quality is really nice. Like, it's nice and high. Everything kind of looks good. As you said, the individual character, like, background stories, they're actually really nicely done. Well, other than the log ladies, which is just, oh, goodness, don't bother. Close it.
The art style itself isn't the problem. It's the fact that it's 5 minutes long, set to the most repetitive song possible.
But, you can jump out of these things or skip them pretty easy, so I don't think that one's specifically a big deal. In a lot of ways, that's most of the game. There are actually a whole bunch of endings, depending on who you are when the end clock ticks over, mostly, it seems to be.
This game would almost just be better if it were a CD menu, like how the end credits are. You can just kind of click on the guys.
No, I think that it's a really interesting. Again, I'm going to go back to calling it like an art piece. It really kind of feels like an art piece mixed with a game. Like the kind of thing that you would maybe actually have gotten in an art gallery. Like you sit down on a computer and you play it for like 10 minutes and then you leave. Like that's the kind of thing that I see this as.
That's what it should have been.
Spoilers. I think the thing about the plot that's kind of ballsy is that it's literally just a rat bites someone, it spreads a plague, and the only thing that really changes about the ending is who the last one standing is and if they find the gold or whatever.
Oh, you can find the gold.
I mean, if the last one alive.
Oh, okay. Fair enough.
There's some other things. I really like that if you're playing as Ted actually, you trigger Ted's ending after everyone dies, and that's either by Ted's hand or the plague. You actually have to look in the Hall of Madness mirrors, or the Madness Mirror, whatever it is. I think it's the Eye of Madness, I think it's called. You look in that, and that triggers the ending, and it is a grim ending. Although not surprising, given Ted's character and his penchant for murdering the entire cast. But he won't murder Timmy. Timmy is safe, so if you want to just play the game and just explore, Timmy is a good option, and you start as him. And I guess we didn't quite go into this last little bit. There's a really nice feature of this game. you get the scattered thoughts of the character that you're playing as in the bottom half of the window, which is really, really cool.
It's the best way the game characterizes the characters. Our dear listeners may have noticed that Cal got hit by a sudden burst of optimism a few minutes ago. He was quoting Timmy's characterizations in the little thought bubbles at the bottom of the game.
Yeah, Timmy is enthusiastic all the time.
Even when you see someone's face wad off right in front of him.
But I love that all the characters do have different writing and different thoughts. And if you do have Ted, his state of mind just steadily decreases in the duration of the game. It's really cool. At the start, he's just kind of like thinking, and then just by the end of it, he's just like, gotta kill, gotta end the ugly, gotta end the ugly. Like, it's just the same words like repeated over and over and over. And I thought that was a really cool usage of the text.
I don't think we brought this up. This game is the blackest of black comedies. There's a Nazi, it's either a former Nazi or Nazi sympathizer. I wasn't 100% sure. I mean, we had Better Dead Than Red, which is used by both sides of the Germans and Americans at the time.
The character is strict anti-communist, hates communism, which this game was obviously overshot the Cold War, but the game itself is set during the Cold War, so that's, that fits together. But he's super massive, super big into Nazism, and you can actually look at his Nazi dream, and you don't really notice it because it's not part of the game until you look in this guy's memories, and you're like, what? Oh, and there's some ironic, the tax man is the most insanely do you love your country, Timmy? You gotta love your country.
But it also extends beyond weird patriotism. I think Timmy's got some sort of line about, wow, this is better than the time Old Man Johnson's house caught on fire.
It's a fun game while also being extremely dark. It'll go in record as one of the few games where you can play as the child character, and then get yourself killed. You get yourself crushed by a giant snowman, which is rare in games, and it doesn't care at all. It just says, you got crushed by a giant snowman. Like a custom ending where you just get crushed by a giant snowman, because that's the joke. I like this game quite a bit. I'm probably the strongest opponent for this game, but you play it for the experience of playing it a few times, and then you'd be like, okay, I got that. I understand that. I see where they're going with that. I don't need to play this game for the next 10 years.
The game is what everyone thinks FMV games are.
It's all smoke and mirrors. It seems like this big deal where you get to experience the story from multiple perspectives, but the problem is there's just so much waiting.
I think this is a lot better than that, because this is a lot closer to what an FMV game should have been in terms of where they should have tried to go. It's an interactive movie in a way that's actually close to interactive. And I like that the perspectives of the game shifts. That's, again, it's you could see a movie from multiple perspectives. It has more of the, I guess what I think you were trying to say, though, this is a lot closer to what you might have expected FMV games to be, where they should go. Not just a movie that you watch, but something that's kind of it uses the format to tell an interesting, or at least tell a story that's kind of can't do as a movie. It has to be told as a game.
Well, what I guess I was trying to get at more was when I actually think of FMV games, having played a few of them, I think of them closer to adventure games, say along the vein of Myst. I mean, maybe not full on Monkey Island, because I've talked about this before, and we've mentioned several times, a lot of the events in the games feel like you should be able to stack them and put them, and you set up the people in the right places, but you can't. It just feels completely random, as far as we could tell.
It does seem to be random, and also a bunch of people will randomly die of getting rat plague during the game.
Exactly, because you can get what's his name, Auto bit, right? Pretty much. Or no, that's still random, isn't it?
Well, no, you can get him bit to start it.
The whole rat plague thing is probably one of the more frustrating details, because the game doesn't feel like it really has much of a plot when you get right down to it. I love the backstories, but when you actually get to the main story, it's so disappointing in comparison.
The cutscenes are the biggest draw, because all the little separate characters. Because I mean, Ted, he does a whole story where he talks about this lunatic, and he keeps stopping, and he's like, and then my friend, or whatever he says.
He says the boy, or I think because he likes Timmy because Timmy reminds himself of not when he was a messed up crazy person. So
yes, yeah, and that's right. And then as he keeps going crazier and crazier, and then he's like, the boy.
I think Ted's a really interesting character. I think the whole game is full of relatively interesting character archetypes for a game. But we can't drag this out any longer, as much as I would like to talk about this one. I feel like we should rank it, because we are going to end up going in circles with this one.
Cal, you go ahead and start, and I will scroll down about 20 more places.
Oh, so you're saying I should just start really high, and then the negotiation will go better.
Looking at Spirits of Xanadu myself.
I would would have put it somewhere maybe above Little Samson.
My problem is I don't know if you would lose much just watching a Let's Play of it.
Yeah, I mean, I think the act of clicking around and choosing when to switch bodies and stuff is at least kind of interesting. They put a lot of effort in this game for things and features that didn't really ultimately matter at all, which I think is always like the funniest thing.
Let's just say, is it better than LSD?
LSD feels a little bit too maybe randomly generated. There's like actual structure, more actual points in Midway.
I mean, my opinion is LSD was robbed. It's got nothing to do with the ranking position of LSD.
I think for me, if the game was basically like Myst with multiple characters and on a time limit, I would have probably liked it a lot more, but the lack of anything to do between waiting for conversations to trigger is probably the biggest turnoff for me, since after you see all the Midway has to offer, there's really no point going back, especially given how horrifying most of the sites actually are.
Yeah.
It's gotta be horrifying. I don't know, that was the point. I'm happy to put it above Sega Sonic the Hedgehog, the arcade game. It's kind of as far down as I'd be sort of happy with.
What do you think, Gunheart?
And Kel's last placement sounds about right to me.
And that's above Sega Sonic the Hedgehog, but below Zookeeper.